Okay, another example. Find the slope determined by the following pair of points. So you have 4 comma 0 and negative 1 comma 2 over 5, or 2/5. So they're basically asking you to determine the ratio comparing rise to run between any 2 points on this line, and will also be specifically between these 2 points. So if you'd like to find slope, what you're going to need to do is either you could make a picture of this, you could use a graph and try to count the rise and the run. And that gets a little bit trickier when you're talking about fraction numbers, because the counting doesn't become, nice whole numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So oftentimes people use a formula, and in the tutor mode, they should help us out with this. So let's see what they say. If we click on tutor, we should get a step-by-step. There we go. And they basically say, in order to determine slope, let x1, y1, that's x, the ones there aren't powers or anything like that, they're just subscript to say, let's say the first x value is x1, the first y value is y1, that's 4 comma 0, and let x2, y2, let x2 be negative 1, and let y2 be 2/5. And then they say enter the values in the boxes below, and then they give you the formula. Slope equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So this is the change in y, the subtraction of the y values, over the change in x, or the subtraction of the x values. So basically on paper what you're going to be wanting to do is say 2/5 take away 0 divided by negative 1 minus 4. I click submit. It says I've entered that step correctly. Okay, and then they want you to calculate each one. Now 2/5 take away 0 is obviously 2/5. This would get a little bit trickier if you had maybe another fraction instead of 0. You'd actually have to remember how to work with fractions, getting a common denominator, combining the numerators through addition or subtraction. So keep that in mind, that skill is going to pop up in this section in a couple problems probably, saying, do you know how to add or subtract fractions? And you may want to brush up on that or ask for help if you get stuck. The bottom calculation, minus 1 minus 4, is a negative 1 plus a negative 4. If you're bad with negatives, that should end up being a negative 5. Because remember, you're adding 2 negatives, which would be, excuse me, another negative. So we'll say submit. Okay. And now simplify the answer from the previous step, enter your answer in the reduce box below. Another step that may be tricky for people, may be tricky for you, is how do you calculate something like this where there's a fraction over another fraction. A limitation for me, because I'm explaining it through the software and not on a whiteboard or something, is that I can't show you this step nice and clearly on the screen here, but what I do is I think of this as 2/5 divided by negative 5 over 1, and I'll end up flipping and multiplying negative 5 over 1, so I end up with negative 1/5 multiplied with 2/5. So if you can visualize that, 2 over 5 times 1 over negative 5. And when you multiply across the top, you'd end up with 2, and you multiply across the bottom, you end up with negative 25. Oh, I forget, the negatives, they like to be written on the top, so we can say the bottom can end up being 25, but we'll toss that negative sign up to the top. negative 2 over 25, that's reduced, it's as far as you can go. Say submit. Okay? And let me move that box out of the way. Just think about what that means. It says the final answer is negative 2 over 25. What that means in terms of rise over run is that from point to point, there's a ratio of going down 2 for every 25 that you go to the right. So if it's a negative value for rise, that means essentially drop. Drop 2, go 25 to the right. If you reverse it, you could put the negative down below and think of go up 2 for every 25 that you go to the left. If you toss this negative back down, is what I'm saying. So either way, it gives you the same type of ratio and ends up on the same line as you graph. Okay? So the way it's written there, rise over run, down 2, for every 25 it goes to the right, is the ratio of the line that contains these 2 points up above.